I've dealt with creationists, for about 2 years now since becoming an atheist. But there's something about this past year or so, when dealing with the likes of, say, Nephilim Free, or Pillbox, or, quite a few other people. They use this stupid, just, evolution is a fairy tale. And I hear that, and I want to slap him in the dick. Because I just, it's almost, it's like I don't think they understand the implications of what they're saying. They're trying to say that evolution is a fairy tale. Have they ever read a fairy tale in their life? I mean, other than the Bible? Now, I know you're going to be all upset because I called the Bible a fairy tale because everybody says that. But let's really look at what a fairy tale is and what it comprises of. And let's make some notes, okay? A fairy tale, according to the Merriam-Webster.com dictionary, a simple narrative, typically of folk origin dealing with supernatural beings. Fairy tales may be written or told for the amusement of children, or may have a more sophisticated narrative containing supernatural or obviously improbable events, scenes, personages, and often having a whimsical, satirical, or moralistic character. It is often difficult to distinguish between tales of literary and oral origin because folk tales have received literary treatment from early times, and literary tales can often be traced back to an oral tradition. In fairy tales, there are common elements, things that are done throughout most, if not all, fairy tales. For example, special beginnings. A special quote or phrase set at the beginning of a fairy tale. Most popularly, you will see things like once upon a time. I mean, try and think of how many fairy tales you know that don't start with that. Well, the Bible has its own special beginning. In the beginning. There are also characters that you're going to find in the Bible. You have to have characters if you're going to have a story. Most commonly, you're going to see good characters, and those tend to be the protagonist. And in the Bible, our good character would be Jesus. I mean, perfect example of a good guy. He was walking around, healing people, making the lame walk and the blind see, and reviving people, and, just an all-around good guy. But then you have the real, just evil, morally reprehensible characters like God. I mean, that bastard was so evil. I mean, a few chapters into the book, and he's already flooded an entire world of humans and babies and animals that didn't do anything wrong other than not worship him properly. And the animals didn't even do that. They didn't even know he existed, but they had to get flooded anyways. Then he orders people to kill people, orders people to rape and pillage and plunder, and tells people to take people for their slaves, and just he's so just evil. It's a perfect counter. It's just so weird that his own son is the protagonist, but also him at the same time. Well, I mean, since I know that's going to offend people, let's just say the devil is the evil one. Of course, that's how the New Testament likes to point him out to be, but not the Old Testament. There's really no devil in the Old Testament. But let's just stick with the devil for now and just move on. In fairy tales, royalty is a very common trope. We've got princes and princesses and kings and queens. They're just everywhere. And then so in the Bible. I mean, there's at least 12, 15 different kings, and most common and most popular you're going to see is King David and King Solomon. But of course, then there's also God, who's the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Then you have Jesus, who's the Prince of Peace. And then you also have the devil, who's also a prince, but he's the prince of lies. And then there's also the problem of Jesus being the prince, and then he's also the king, because him and God are the same. Yeah. Poverty is also a very common trope. We see this in things like Snow White or Cinderella. This person is very poor, very downtrodden, and then they end up being the princess, or finding a prince or whatever. Bible has plenty of that too. Let's look at King David. Poor shepherd boy eventually raises up to being a king. If you've ever read the Bible, then you've probably figured out that the Jews just love them some numbers and meanings for those numbers. For example, the number 1 means unity. 3 means completeness, but not complete as 7. 5 means God's grace. 6 generally represents man's weakness, and 7 means like the ultimate incompleteness. But of course, that doesn't just stop there. Actually, the Jews have a significance for numbers ranging from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 24, 25, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 33, 34, 40, 42, 50, 51, 65, 70, 120, 153, 200, 390, 400, 430, 490, and most importantly, 666. Let's take the number 7 for example. 7 means completeness. Some examples are we're going to see that in Revelations, there's the 7th and final seal. For the priests in the Old Testament, there were 7 days for sanctification. On the 7th day, God rested. When you were worshiping God and you were making a sacrifice, you just sprinkled the blood 7 times. Jesus told his disciples that you had to forgive someone 70 times 7. The number 70 is literally the sevens in Hebrew. 7 times 10, so 7, 10 times, 7, 7, 7, 10, blah, blah. And then finally, there are 70 elders. In fairy tales, we also have very common motifs. For example, talking animals or talking objects. Well, we have in the Bible talking snakes and talking donkeys. On top of talking donkeys and talking angels, we have the cherubims that were guardian spirits of heaven, that were a combination of lion, bull, and human, and eagle. We have the cockatrice, which is the combination of a rooster and a snake. We have dragons, and we have chimeras that are combinations of snakes, lions, and eagles. We have satyrs, which are half human, half goat, which if you've ever seen Chronicles of Narnia, then you know what I'm talking about. We have the giants, rather known as the Nephilim. We have the Leviathan, which is a giant water dragon living out in the sea, also known as Rahab. And then we have the angels and demons. Does this not sound like something you would see in a fairy tale? I mean, we don't see things like cherubims or cockatrices. Just gonna go on. In fairy tales, we also see origin stories. Basically little brief mentionings of, where the land is, where it came from, blah, blah, blah. Or the characters, where do they come from, who are they? Well, we see that with a lot of the characters in the Bible and with the Genesis creation story itself. Many fairy tales talk about human weaknesses, and we see this in the Bible with the Israelites and their failures. They, worshiping the wrong God, or they upset God in some way, or, they're complaining because they're tired and they're hungry and they're not, they're thirsty, and then they're just not trusting God. We have Adam and Eve who trusted the serpent over God's word, and then they kind of screwed things up for everybody. Thanks a lot. And then we have Samson who trusted Delilah with his secret, even though he was told to never tell anybody his secret. And that ended up costing him his life. We have Jonah, who was supposed to go out and witness to people and be a prophet, and then he chose to not do so, and he ended up inside of a giant fish. And we have Moses. He talked about how when God wanted him to go to the Israelites, he tried to say, like, God, I'm not, that good with speaking and things like that. So we have quite a few examples of weaknesses in the human characters in the Bible. In contrast to human weakness, fairy tales also like to talk about human strengths. And if we talk about human strengths, Samson comes to mind because he was super freaking strong. Killed thousands of men and, just super powerful. We have Noah, who built a giant boat that was taken forever to build for one man to build by himself, and he did it, and harboring all the animals and ushering them off to safety for the flood. We have Jesus himself, who conquered death. He lived a sinless life, lived perfect life, and he was straight up just a good guy. Those are all great examples of human strength. In fairy tales, we see a common trope of telling tall tales. Telling stories that are just a little bit, if not a lot, out of the scope of things that we would accept in our daily lives. For example, Noah's flood. Samson killing thousands upon thousands of men on his own. And then the finale at the temple where he pushes the towers away, the columns away, and the temple falls. Jonah being in a fish for a few days. Lots of stories are in the Bible that you really have to suspend a lot of belief. If you are not convinced that the Bible tells tall tales, let's give some more examples. Magic Man creates the universe, Magic Man creates the earth, and then animals, and then men out of dirt and dust, and a woman out of a rib. Then he creates a worldwide flood. Then he sends himself down as his own son, but as himself at the same time. And this son does things like cursing a fig tree, walking on water, turning water to wine, healing blind, lame people, raising people from the dead. Then when he dies, these zombies rise up that were former Jewish saints. We have then the Magic Man rises himself from the dead, and then he flies. Bippity boppity boop. When you think of magic phrases, bippity boppity boop from Cinderella is a pretty common, at least one. You see the old lady with the little wand, and then all of a sudden, poof, Cinderella has a really pretty dress. But the Bible has magic phrases too. Let there be. In Genesis 1, there are 3 different verses where he starts off with let there be, and then the phrase let thee, let the animals, blah, 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 let the oceans, blah, blah, blah. Basically, he has a few starter magic phrases that he starts off with. And you can't have a fairy tale without some monsters in it. And the Bible sure has quite a few of those. You have your Nephilims, your giants, your dragons, your demons, your leviathans, your cockatrices, your god, your devil, all kinds of monsters. Fairy tales often talk about the struggles between good and evil, and if that's not the whole damn point of the New Testament, I don't even know what is. But you have your angels and your demons up in heaven fighting for souls, and you got Jesus, a devil, and Jesus is conquering death so we can win more in the struggle. It's definitely in the Bible. In fairy tales, sometimes the protagonist has to do impossible tasks to be able to save the princess or whatever. So I think about Samson when he had to tie together 3,000 foxes and burn them and sent them running into a field of the Philistines. By the way, that also counts as a fucking tall tale. Do you really expect me to believe that he tied 3,000 foxes together? And finally, sometimes the characters are put to a test. And when I think of characters getting put to a test, I think of Abraham and being told that he needed to sacrifice his son. Now, of course, his son survived, but still, he was put to a test. Of all of the motifs found in fairy tales, the only thing that I found that the Bible doesn't have is someone waking somebody else up from a sleep-like state. Similar to Snow White. Now, of course, the Bible takes this one step further and wakes people up from the dead. So what about evolution? what parts of, fairy tale motifs or elements are we going to find in evolution? There's no graphics are coming across the screen. There's nothing like, oh, it's because there's nothing fucking about evolution that's a fucking fairy tale. So, what did we learn from this? We learned that whoever thought that calling evolution a fairy tale is retarded. Not only that, it's like they didn't even think about what that says about their Bible, because as I've shown, if there's anything, if we're going to compare the two between evolution and the Bible, you want to know which one sounds most like a fairy tale? Hands down, the Bible. This is the Atheist Chef signing off. Peace. Let's really look at what a fairy tale is and what it comprises of, and let's make some notes, okay? A fairy tale, according to the Merriam-Webster.com dictionary, a simple narrative, typically of folk origin, dealing with supernatural beings. Fairy tales may be written or told for the amusement of children, or may have a more I've dealt with creationists, for about 2 years now since becoming an atheist. But there's something about this past year or so, a sophisticated narrative containing supernatural or obviously improbable events, scenes, personages, and often having a whimsical, satirical, or moralistic character. It is often difficult to distinguish between tales of literary and oral origin, because folk tales have received literary treatment from early times, and literary tales can often, when dealing with the likes of, say, Nephilim Free, or Pillbox, or, quite a few other people, they use this stupid, evolution is a fairy tale. And I hear that, and I want to slap him in the dick. Because it's almost, it's like I don't think they understand the implications of what they're saying. They're trying to say that evolution is a fairy tale. Have they ever read a fairy tale in their life? I mean, other than the Bible? Now, I know everybody's going to be all upset because I called the Bible a fairy tale because everybody says that. But